from IG South Africa as we unpack that market picture a little bit more. The market is perhaps pretty much flat today if you want to take a look at it, Sean. So on the local front, it's not really much to cry home about, but as the likes of London get back on board with regards to market movement, could that change things?
Well, I'd say that we are negative today. So I think that the general bias, the trend that we saw last week is continuing. It is marginal, but it's not great that we saw, the US and the UK offline yesterday on account of those public holidays, and then coming back online, and then not managing to hold on to any gains. So there is just that sort of negative bias to our market at this moment, that sort of trend. Even the weaker rand's not giving us enough to push those rand hedges to put that whole index into positive territory.
Yeah. What's kind of shifting markets now, though? It seems a little haphazard, right? It seems if it's not the trade issue, then we'll focus on Europe and those elections. There's obviously Brexit also at play. There's the oil surge or the oil situation kind of happening as well. Where should one be looking when taking a look at this market picture?
Right, that's a very interesting question. So there's, when you see that negative bias to market, there's definitely cautious in the market. The macro themes are obviously towards the, trade war is the dominant headline. We had, Donald Trump coming out and saying he's not ready to do a deal with China just yet, aggravating the situation a little bit. He's there in Japan, and he's talking about China. It seems like that trade deal is drifting further apart. We have the Brexit uncertainty now, or we have the leadership uncertainty, after British Prime Minister Theresa May has stepped down. So, it is quite news-driven markets, so anything can change, the markets can change quite quickly. It's not encouraging that we're not holding on to gains. So, from, IG's, we look at the derivative space and short-term trading, and a lot of that is really geared at, trading news events and waiting for these outcomes. And then, banking a profit as soon as you get one.
Yeah, if you can find one. If you can find one, yeah. Worried about that rand picture at all? Around a 1% fall as well today. 1463 as it looks behind you as well then. Should we be concerned?
Yeah, so there's a risk-off scenario, and we're seeing, emerging market currency weakness as a whole. But I will say that when you look at the rand has underperformed, its BRICS peers and other emerging market currencies today. So that's showing you that there is some sort of domestic catalyst for weakness. We do think that the delayed cabinet appointments and the cabinet appointment would have some influence there. I think there's anxiety leading into that. We also have the South Africa sort of weighting in the MSCI emerging market index being reduced somewhat, so there's some selling there. But the rand is, and in turn we're seeing the rand weakness, but not just from the macro catalyst, but from the domestic catalyst as well. I've been looking at the rand and, looking at a sort of a basic trading range somewhere between 14 Rand 15 to the dollar and 14 Rand 60. And we've reached now that 14 Rand 60 point. So next level on the way up could be 14.75 is a short-term target for me.
Sure.
And that's, maybe the market will calm down. Maybe the currency will see some sort of strength returning once we have the dust settled on the cabinet reappointment.
Yeah, cheaper. So a whole lot of weakness then still expected from that. We lose some sort of, I suppose we actually gain some sort of attractiveness with regards to that. And of course our interest rates being where they are. But would you put a bet on the rand for this year in particular, or is it just straight weakness as we continue to, see the rand generally head a little bit weaker over the years?
Okay, so at the moment, I do think the rand's probably a little bit undervalued at current levels. Yeah. But if you look at, the recent Reserve Bank meeting, they didn't raise interest rates, but the commentary was quite dovish. So we're expecting 25 basis point cuts. I think it's the first quarter of 2020. They've alluded towards that. We know that the last meeting, they did suggest that, 2 of the 5 members were in favor of actually cutting interest rates as well, which is, so that is, would stimulate inflation. It's weaker for our currency. So rates are accommodative. The rand, I think, is a little bit undervalued. There's uncertainty. I think if we get a nice downsized cabinet announced today, some of the key people in key places, I think we could see some recovery in the currency. Looking, long into the future, forward into the future. I don't want to look further than the next month or two.
It's possibly a scary.
The dynamics change so quickly at this point.
Yeah, it's possibly a scary prospect just looking into that future as well, just knowing where things could go. On the company news front, of course, then we had quite a bit happening. Yes, we've had earnings news as well over the past couple of days, but Astral as well coming out today. Your perhaps thoughts then? Do you still rate the company quite? A lot then? I mean, it is a struggle sort of late, and things haven't been that easy for it.
Yeah, I think I think it's a good business. The problem is at the moment, obviously they're incurring all these costs, restricted water supplies from the Standerton municipality. So that's incurring a higher input cost for the business. Sort of basic maths there, I think it works out to about somewhere between 1 and 2 rand earnings per share. Because with that water feed, they have to delay the slaughter of the poultry or the chickens. It means they feed the chickens a little bit more. It means that they might have to take the chickens elsewhere to be slaughtered. So those all added costs to the business. On the other flip side of that, a lot of these businesses do have these types of continuity types of insurance, and we haven't heard anything about that. So I'd be interested to see whether Astral, has these mechanics in place. I don't think, I think at this level, this price level, the share is actually quite attractive.
Okay.
The problem is, when you come to chicken and poultry, and it is quite, input costs can vary. Maize prices will affect that as well.
Yeah.
Maize, soy prices. They use soy quite a lot for the feed for chickens.
All right. Sean, appreciate your time this afternoon, but thank you so much for that. Having checked in, of course, on that market picture. Unfortunately, we couldn't chat about African Bank there, but I did get to speak to the CEO, Basani Maluleka, a little bit earlier on as well to unpack the picture for them and their earnings season. 12,000 new customers coming through that transactional banking called My World. We'll get to unpack that with her just after the